And welcome everyone to this week's American Mussar Community Gathering. This will be our second week exploring the soul trait of trust or trust in the divine. I really enjoyed our conversation last week, the distinctions between trusting in the divine versus trusting in
Oh,
people, and some of the wrestling we did around that. And of course, not everyone is sort of sure about the divinities. There was a lot to cover, and we covered a chunk of it, and we'll cover another chunk today. We'll begin now the way we always do with a short meditation. So please relax and close your eyes and take in a deep breath through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And again, inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. As thoughts come into your head, just observe them and let them pass. Like watching a car move past on the road. Now is not the time for solving problems. Right now, all you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema, listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Well, friends, as many of us know, this is a drop-in Mussar group. We've been meeting for almost 5 years now. Some of us have been here a lot of that time. Some of us, this may be one of our first times here. We have discussion. We really try to listen deeply. And towards the end, we have some time in breakout groups with smaller groups where everyone, can get a chance to share. Um, we'll start today. We were also exploring trust last week. And I wanted to start just asking if you were here, how might trust in the divine have shown up for you, or trust in, the universe, trust in yourself, or maybe it didn't, and maybe you felt really challenged by events of the world or events of this week. Um, so yes, Martin.
I guess that an example today is I needed some assistance from some of my colleagues, and the relationship is I just recognize how strong that relationship is, where they just said, "No problem, we'll take care of it,"
Hmm.
and so it's just again, just shows the value of relationships with others. And so I guess the question is, so how does that relationship gets established? Well, I guess if trust is established, then there's a good basis.
Hmm.
So, but speaking of things that are due, I actually have a project meeting due date in about 5 o'clock. So I'll be saying goodbye to the group and wish and trust that everyone will have a nice conversation today. Okay. So,
Well, thank you so much for stopping in, Martin. It's always nice to see you, and good luck on finishing your project.
okay. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye. So, sometimes people use the button which is under reactions to raise their hand digitally, and sometimes people just raise their hand, the old-fashioned way. So who else would like to share? Wendy, did I see your hand earlier?
I was actually waving to Martin, but
Oh, okay. Well, I
I do
do
have
see.
like something that happened that kind of was like opposite of what we've been talking about a little bit. It went from when people trust in us, like when you are trusted in. Um, a long time ago, I our group at Temple, I told them about Greg's book, Rabbi Greg's book, and they were all excited and they trusted me. And so they used the book. And they trusted me that every time I came to the Musar class that I would have read through the book and I would have like some answers for them about things in the book. And then I got really sick for 18 days. I think you guys know that. And I couldn't get it read. And so then I went and we were doing I think it was loving kindness. And they had so many more questions than they'd ever had before. And then I realized, you know what? I, I I want to be trusted. I think I'm trustworthy. I think I will do the things that I say I'm going to do. And then I just had to be very apologetic and telling them that I was not prepared. And so I thought, trust also, we can see trust. How do others trust us? How do they, how do we give back what they're trusting us? And then we're kind of I mean, I just learned a lot from that.
Hmm. Thank you, Wendy. Yes, hiya.
Yeah, I would say there's a person that I've been working with, um, helping me with some things. And the couple times ago that I saw them, it was something just blew up. And it was like, oh, God, what is wrong? What is she, I didn't do anything. But anyway, so I had an appointment with her on Tuesday, and I said, okay, am I going to do this or am I not going to do this? And I said, you know what? Let's give it a try. And I'll just trust that I will know what to do once I get there if it's not good, and I'll know what to do if it is good. And I think that really just opened me up to be able to go and experience whatever I experienced without judgment. And I think that's where the trust came in, that I don't have to judge it as going to be good or going to be bad. And I intend to see this person again. So that really was helpful to just say, God, what should I do?
Hmm.
And just go. You don't have to get hurt. If you get hurt, you can leave. So
Hmm.
that's my trust practice this week.
Thank you so much, Hiya. And yeah, that's a great example. This is one of the more challenging ones, and that I think is spoken to kind of in um, the first slide I wanted to share today. So this is from Rabbi David Jaffe from the Mussar curriculum. Because would someone like to unmute and read this, and then we can go back to insights you may have about this, or see if this stimulates some thoughts about the last week or two, or this moment
I,
in
I can
time
read it.
history.
Go ahead. Sue.
Bitachon trust may be one of the most difficult soul traits to acquire. How do you say it again?
It's
Bitachon,
a
right?
bitachon,
Bitachon, okay. Bitachon. Cultivating bitachon
like
trust
Hanukkah, the same idea, bitachon.
as Hanukkah?
Well, I
Bita.
guess it'd be Hanukkah, Hanukkah. You're right. That's a bad example. Anyway, bitachon.
I just didn't understand what you meant. Okay, cultivating bitachon trust means moving towards balancing trust in a loving God or a reliable universe with taking initiative. You never have to believe something you actually don't believe to grow in bitachon, trust. Rabbi David Jaffe, do you want me to continue?
Yeah, let's just read all of these.
Okay. If you are unsure of the divinity, you can think of it as trust in the universe, or trust that doing the right thing will work out okay in the end. Many Mussar masters argue that faith in God is required for Mussar practice in general and is a precursor to trust. Oh, this is from you. I disagree, which is why faith is not one of the sole traits I teach. Greg Marcus, The Spiritual Practice of Good Actions, page 91.
Right. So you don't need to take that as gospel, but that's how I see it. So Bonnie,
So I understood bitachon, I maybe in contemporary Hebrew, to be security. Certainly, when I was living in Israel, that's the term that was used. And I guess if you feel a relationship with God or whomever your higher power is, and there's trust, I think there's security also.
Let's see what this says.
that is absolutely right. Yeah, it's very interesting that that is the modern Hebrew word, that's what they picked. And last time we spent a lot of time talking about the teaching from Rabbi Bachya ibn Pekuda, one who trusts in the divine, neither worries nor laments. So if you have security, that's kind of the challenge. Well, there's this benevolent universe, this benevolent God, and whatever happens, I'm going to be okay. Let's see, Paul.
Yeah, the, the last year or so, I've been slowly trying out something which has been working in terms of how I see this sort of trust in the universe. Because, when I was young, growing up, that's the last thing I would do because there was nothing trustworthy anywhere I could find. So it's what I've been experiencing, and is that if I have it in my mind that I'm sort of working with my higher power as a partner in whatever's going on, so um, I'm not supplicating, I'm not sort of saying that it's all you and none of me,
Mhm.
uh, but it's also not all me and I don't need you anymore. It's really
Mhm.
somewhere in between, and in the same way that I've been also learning how to, if I think I understand or know how something needs to be done, then I'm working with somebody or, trying to do something with somebody, then that doesn't mean that I just take over because I think I know. It means verbalizing or articulating that I think I know what I can do, but what do you think? And or if they're having a problem, I say, well, let me know if you need any help. I'm right here. And sort of in that way. So it's happening in my relationships with people, and it's also been happening with my relationship with my higher power or God. And so that's been how I've been experiencing it. So
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and I hear that you're really experimenting with it and you're pushing the boundaries of how you want to approach it, if I'm interpreting correctly. Yeah, thank you. So, Sue,
I was blessed to be in a really nice, warmer place in Florida, with my parents, and I would go out every morning for a walk. And to me, when you think about a higher power or God, it's getting outside of myself and taking a walk or being on the beach. And to me, I see God in the heavens, and it's just beautiful, especially on the beach. When, there was one point where the sky opened up and it was just beautiful and it looked like there was God there. And I mean, you look at it as God or, the universe, or there's something out there. but I'm thinking of it, and it always makes me happy too, when I go for these walks or I'm on the beach, and and I often will pray. I'm grateful to God, and then I pray to God. And, so I start with gratitude and prayers. But I tend to do that a lot of times when I'm outside, or even this morning when I was back here in the frozen tundra of Minnesota, it was -1. And I was driving in the morning, but there were these two deer looking at me. And first of all, I felt compassion because I was like, oh, the poor deer, because it was so cold. But then I said, good morning, dear. And I don't know, it takes you outside of yourself. And then it's godlike to me. So, and I'm kind of lost the trust factor here, but I'm trusting in something outside of myself to get me through the day especially when things are crazy. And it always does. It takes me outside of what's going on.
Yeah, thank you. I really love that. And the word that came to me as I was thinking about what you're saying was sort of inspiration, that we can get really inspired by the beauty of nature or of animals or sometimes of people and of all kinds of things. And that's a big part of it, is just remembering that it's not all about us. It's not all in our control. I'm not arguing that things are in the control of a higher power, but they're certainly not in my control. And there's a very limited amount that I can do to kind of influence things. And um, I had an interesting situation that came up, and then we'll get to you in just a second, Marjorie. It was a professional situation a couple of weeks ago, and I got some questions, and I don't know, they were a little bit out of left field, but I answered them. And then I got off the call and I'm just like, what was that all about? And I thought about a number of things that I could have added on. And I really felt this strong impulse to kind of charge back in and write an email and explain some more. And I'm like, no, I said what I had to say, and I need to trust in the outcome. Maybe what I'm looking for, it may not be, but just going in and saying more wasn't going to be helpful. And it was helpful for me to just kind of step back. And I think the trust in the divine or trust in the universe is, whatever happens, this is not going to make or break my life in any way. It felt very urgent and it felt very important, but in the scheme of things, it really wasn't. And so being able to just kind of let go was helpful for me. Marjorie, hello, nice to see you.
Hi, thank you. It's great to be here. I wasn't here last week, I don't think. But you're talking of the natural order of things. And for me, it just brought up that is one aspect of life that I know that is consistently trustworthy for me. And it is also, for me, it's a very divine spiritual creation. Like for me, that God created, or spiritual, whatever I say, God created heaven and earth, and I just trust. I know. I mean, it's just a given. I can trust that the sun's going to come up and it's going to go down. And if the sirens go off, there's going to be a tornado. Um, and yeah. So it just, speaking of nature and trust, that thought just entered my head.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's it. That and taxes and death. I trust, and that those are consistent.
There's so many of the Psalms that kind of do what you do, which they tie in sort of God's trustworthiness to the cycles of nature. It's just going to happen, and this was a divinely created world, and the sun goes up and down, and the seasons change, and, whatever's going on now, it's going to change to something else. All right.
One more thing.
Yes, please.
I was just going to add one thing. I also have just started, and actually I want to talk to you about it later, but this Mussar group in the Twin Cities here, because I wanted some direct connection too besides Zooming, and I thought I'd check it out. I'm still not certain that that's what I want to do, but I was just reading here under um, this particular section, and then it says about how a tree, for example, trusts that, because it still continues to grow even when the water doesn't flow. And I thought that was really interesting to think of it that way, because it's having the root, and that the roots of a tree is kind of like do we believe, do we trust? And the tree's roots trust that the water is going to come. And I kind of like that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a great metaphor. And we will get sustenance. Okay, well, let's take this a little bit deeper. So we talked about this last time, the spectrum, and Paul made a little reference to this as well when he was saying, it's not like it's all on me, or it's not like it's all on the divine, that there's, some work for each of us to do, which, I love this idea of trust in God, but tie your camel, which I learned from an Arabic saying, trust in Allah, but tie your camel. And if any of you saw the blog version of the of last week's email, I found a really nice picture of a camel like trying to pull away from somebody with a rope. But there's this idea that, we're on a spectrum, and if we kind of show up in life with too little trust that we're going to get that the water's going to be there for us, it can be fearful. But, if we have too much trust, we may not pay attention to the fact that the water hasn't been there for a little while, and that we maybe need to change our behaviors at this moment. So with that in mind, could someone unmute and read this quote from Rabbi Ibn Ezra?
I will. The past is no more. The future is yet to come. The present is a fleeting moment. Why worry? Rabbi Avraham ibn Ezra, a 12th century sage from Spain.
Thank you, Wendy. So Ibn Ezra, he's describing, to me, this sounds like a mindfulness practice. We're not going to focus on the past. We're not going to worry about the future. And that, the present is just here for a moment. So do you agree or disagree that therefore we don't need to worry? Bonnie, and then Wendy.
I am really uncomfortable with this. And perhaps it's because I now live alone. And when you said trust in God but tie your camel, I trust in the locks on my doors, but I also have a security system.
Mhm.
I'm not ready to say, why worry? The present is a fleeting moment. I want to just make sure I do all of the right things
Mhm.
and I can relax, but not why worry. I just need to make sure that my ducks are in a row. And
Yeah.
then I don't have control if those ducks decide to fly away, but they are in some kind of control before they fly away.
Yeah, thank you. So it's not all just a mental exercise, there's pieces in the world. So we have Wendy, and then Megan, and then Michael.
Well, I kind of agree, and I don't disagree, but I think this is a very hard concept to grasp and to actually act on. I think this is something that human beings have to deal with, like on a constant basis. And so it's like, why worry? And I said, well, because if you have to worry that you're not getting that. In other words, it's kind of cyclical. Worry, and then you go, okay, and then you worry. And I think it also it leads to like superstition. when you worry. I had that, I think it was 2 days ago when I plugged in my Fitbit, and then I went to unplug it and I realized that I have a way of unplugging it because there was a pattern. If I unplugged it from the wall first, my Fitbit would just not be charged. So I have to unplug it from the charger first every time.
Hmm.
Like superstitious, like I wasn't trusting that piece of equipment. And so I had to make up something for it. So that was my way of worrying, I think. It's really hard not to worry.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you, Wendy. Megan.
I don't know if I'm going to answer this question or not, but it just sparked for me a memory. Maybe 5 years ago, I had a student that had some post-traumatic stress issues, and she would have panic attacks, and I was her person. So when she was in the hallway, having an episode, someone would come get me and I would go to her. And the only way to snap her out of her frenzy was to say things like, tell me 3 things that you see, or tell me something that you hear right now. And all of a sudden it would like snap her into the present moment. And you could like tell that her breathing would change, and kind of take her out of that. And I just think that's I don't know, this just made me think of that. Like coming back to the present can be so healing. You're not worried about what happened in the past, and you don't need to think about what's happening in the future. You're just here right now.
Love that example. Thank you, Megan. Michael.
There we go. Sorry. I find this incredibly hard to do, but incredibly aspirational. And I know that when I do it, I'm healthier. I mean, to bounce off of what Megan just said, yeah, I can let my mind spin, and when my mind's spinning, it's in the past or it's in the future or it's someplace else, but it's not here right now. And not only does my mind spinning usually not lead me anywhere good, it leads me to all sorts of places I cannot control. But it also means I'm missing this moment. And if I'm going to be like, even right here, right now, I'm going to be fully present here with y'all and gather up whatever knowledge I can from y'all. And thank you, y'all are wonderful. I have to be present and focused and not following my mind wherever it wants to take me, or else I've missed this moment. And, I can live my life in my head, or I can live my life being present with other people. I would prefer to live my life being present with other people. It's not easy to do, but it's aspirational.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael. Karen.
Aspirational was exactly the word I was thinking of. But the way I see it is that I don't see God as a person, as a parent, as I see God as the amalgamation of aspirational traits that are perfect and are where I want to get to. And so I can trust that those traits, that God as traits is always going to be with me and give me the support that I need when I self-reflect on those traits. But people, all of us, me included, have that tug between good and evil inclination. And so trusting people seems a completely different plane of trust. And that is more based on, for me, control and experience, and making a decision. But I see those as completely different types of trusting relationships, and possibly even different from animals that really have an animal instinct. They don't have the ability of free choice. Then animals act like animals. So in the majority of cases, you really can predict maybe how an animal is going to behave and I predict, for lack of a better word of saying it, what the traits are that I trust in, that if I try to use those traits to the best of my ability, I'm going to feel better about my place in the world, and people will feel better about being around me in the world. But with people, it's a very different plane for trust, because none of us are perfect and we all have free choice or free will.
Thank you, Karen. I love the way you make these distinctions between trusting other people and trusting the divine. And that's I've been thinking about it. You mentioned some of that last week too, and I've been thinking about it. It makes a lot of sense to me. Thank you. Paul.
Yeah, the times, going back to this wondering about past is no more, future is yet to come, present fleeting moment, why worry? Um, I have to say it's difficult. It can be difficult to get there, definitely. When I do get to that place, it doesn't feel like the present is like an infinitesimal slice of time. It feels like it's an infinite slice of time now. It feels like if I'm in the present, then everything is available. And it doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's wow. And the other thing that happens has been happening for me occasionally is that if I am, as I had mentioned before, sort of treating my higher power as my partner in trying to figure stuff out, try to make the right decision, try to say the right, be the right, take the right action, that if I don't know what that is now, that if I stay, if I just allow this, the process to take place, um, and where I don't need to fuss about it or worry about it, then a moment can occur later on. And if I'm not worrying about the past or the future, then I recognize it and I can take the right action at that point. I mean, when it happens, it's like, wow, that was really cool. And it's a little bit, I mean, this is going to be a very different metaphor, I suppose, but you know, I work on crossword puzzles, and I'm sure everybody who works on things like that, you kind of bang your head against the wall because you just can't get whatever it is, and walk away from it for 5 minutes or overnight, and you come back and you go, "Oh, that was so obvious," you know. And that's a little bit of what has happened for me, just looking at what the rabbi was saying back in the 12th century. So um, I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but that's what I got. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And I could definitely relate to that kind of idea of spaciousness when we're sort of in that sort of mindful present point. But I certainly know when this is not helpful to me is that when I am super worried or upset, if somebody shows up and says, "Why worry? You're just in the present," that's not just be in the present, that's like, middle finger time. I'm just not receptive to hearing that because that's not where I am. It's not for someone else to tell us that we should be there. It's an opportunity in sort of these calmer moments like right now where we can say, okay, this is something we can aspire to, um, etc. So yeah, Harry.
Yeah, it sounds like the past is getting a bad rap. And I think we can't forget that where do we learn from?
Mm.
We learn from the past.
Mm-hmm.
And, the old line is if you don't learn from the past, it's going to repeat itself.
Mm.
And so I just need to, put it, just make sure we understand that there's value in the past and the present, and which could have a tremendous effect on our future.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that's what life is about. is to continue to learn and grow. And we learn from the past and we experience it in the present.
Thank you, Harry.
Yeah.
So you're from Sue and Wendy, and then we're going to head to our breakout rooms.
I love that, Harry, and it makes me think of the word remember, and we're on the shoulders of our ancestors and to honor them. What I was thinking about, what I wanted to say was about why worry. I was thinking about that today, and when I think about what I worry about, a lot of the things I worry about don't happen, and something else happens. So it's also kind of a wasted, not, I don't know if it's wasted, but it can be one of those wasted emotions where you're worrying about something and that doesn't happen, but something else happens that you didn't even think about.
Yeah. Thank you, Sue. Wendy.
I was just thinking about worrying as a good thing. And if I worry about something, then I focus on it, I'm aware of it, and I might not be able to fix it. So then I'm going to turn to the divine. I'm going to trust in the divine. And also, Karen brought up the point that I'm thinking of trust in God, tie your camel. If you do it the opposite way, you tie your camel because you can't trust, and you trust in God because you can. So that there's always going to be something that you can't trust. And you have to be aware of it. Maybe that's what you're worrying about. I don't know.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. All right, well, I have a quote which I'm going to share in the chat. So this is from Rabbi Cantor Allison Westcott. We're placed in a world in which we never know whether we are facing a situation when we simply need to let go and trust, a situation in which we need to actively resist the direction in which the path ahead of us seems to lead. So with your partner, maybe talk about this tension and how do you kind of figure that out? Is this one where I need to just sort of trust, or is this one where I need to kind of get in there and take some kind of action? Is my camel tied enough? I don't want to tie it so tightly it gets choked out, and can't move at all. But I don't want a loose rope where it just runs off. And so that's the thought. I am going to open the rooms. Hey everyone, welcome back. Okay, so I've been sort of puzzling on this and I don't have any answers. So I hope you've all sort of figured this out and can share. How do we know? It's time to go with the flow and when we need to maybe fight against the grain of the universe.
Oh,
Yes, Wendy, let's get us started.
Well, our group was very, very interesting. And it was very exciting because we were in the moment. It was just this great feeling. We were speaking to one another in the moment. We didn't go to the past, we didn't go to the future, because sometimes we do all do that, when we're talking and something happened this way or that way. It was so exciting and it was just so refreshing. And I feel like uplifted.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's such a nice feeling when we get to that place and when we connect with people in that way. Thanks for sharing that. Anyone else have something to add? Yes, Harry.
Yes. Well, I was just talking to Sue and we were connecting, and I have a dilemma just on that situation where I'm on the board of a foundation, and I totally disagree with what they're trying to do, and I have to make a decision. Do I, be complacent and let it go and trust it's going to work out, or do I do something that's sort of a warning to the rest of the board.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm trying to work through. So it's a major dilemma. But the good news is, if they go this direction, I don't have to be a board member anymore, and I can just move on. So
Yeah.
that's my out.
Mhm. Yeah. And sometimes that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
Thank you, Harry. So Karen and then Kaya.
Okay. I hope I got this right. But we had an interesting discussion where we both came to the conclusion that drawing inspiration from the traits that we see as God gives us the strength, the courage, the whatever soul traits we need to trust or not trust in the decisions that we make. And so drawing on the traits that we call God is a calming and centering force for us, which helps to alleviate the angst of whatever decisions we make.
Hmm.
And so it's the trust in God more than the trust in people, because we're not always sure if we're trusting or not trusting, if it's the right or the wrong decision, but we can 100% trust that there's a huge array of soul traits that we can call on to learn more and use that can help us to make the best decision that we can do in that moment in time. And whatever that outcome is probably the way things were supposed to happen, whether we can see it in that moment or not. I hope that was clear, but that kind of worked for both of us.
Yeah, I think I get that. It's like there's an array of divine traits, or what I might call divine wisdom, or that we can draw on and to help guide our decision making. And then when we do that, we can maybe angst a little bit less. That maybe that's kind of the direction that we should have gone. And then we make our decision and we go with it without second guessing. Is that kind of in the neighborhood?
Yes. And whether it's right or wrong, we don't always know, because what feels right could be right and what feels right could be followed by wrong, as we've discussed in other sessions.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yes, that's it. We draw on what we're sure of, which is that God has given us soul traits that we can work with, and we use them to the best of our ability to trust or not trust other humans. And then whatever the outcome is probably the way it was supposed to be. Maybe we can see it then, and maybe we need distance to see it.
Thank you, Karen.
So it was really interesting because I have never spoken with Bonnie before, and it was really neat to have somebody new, but also, what I saw there is neither of us have talked to each other, but yet there was this trust here. And where did that trust come from? But if it wasn't from Hashem initially, because we both have Hashem in our hearts, but we didn't know each other. And, we shared some personal things that I thought were really cool. And so, I think trust has there's lots of different levels of trust. And I think trust overall comes from God anyway, because God is giving us this life that we have. And he's, I believe that she is teaching us with different lessons. And I got a great lesson. Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you for sharing that. It reminds us of one of the things we talked about last week, that sort of trust is also an exercise in hope. And we can go into like this new relationship, this encounter with someone who we've never spoken with one-on-one before, kind of from a place of hope and openness, or we can go from a place of guardedness. And, there's lots of things that lead into that decision. And sometimes there's a reason to be guarded, and other times, if there's not a reason, well, maybe we're going to be guarded anyway. And it's like, well, do I need to be guarded in this situation? And I'm so glad you two had a nice connection.
And what you're just saying, and what I was just thinking about, is the fact is that God has given us that ability to trust. That's what it's not necessarily that I just trust God, but giving me the ability to trust others. And so here I am and I think, Bonnie got the same lesson. And so we were able to trust each other. So I think there's many different ways of how does that direction from God come for trust?
Thank you so much. Sue.
I like the idea when Karen was explaining too about calling on the soul traits to make that decision. So for like compassion, for example, and the idea too with the midah that we don't want to go too far one way or the other. So when we're making that decision, we don't want to be too compassionate. We also have to have a firm hand. So trying to be in the middle, and not, and that's so, and then trusting. And so God is ultimately compassionate. So, the compassionate God. So we're feeling that from God, and we're taking that to make the decision of how we're going to be acting, whether we act or not act. And we're taking that quality of compassion and trust.
Thank you, Sue. So Bonnie, you will get the last word today.
So we're doing this. For me, I've been with you, Greg, now 3.5 years. And what I hear today is this tremendous amount of comfort in the support of this group, that it's an extremely safe group, that I don't hear people criticizing other people. They may have different opinions, but it's always done with such caring. Such Menschlichkeit is the best word to use. And how much I appreciate everybody in this group. And I apologize for not having said that sooner. Thank you for creating that feeling of community and support, Greg.
You're very welcome. And I think that's, a community is created by community. It's all of us together that do this. And so I'm very appreciative of everyone's contributions. Because if it was just me talking, we wouldn't have this. So it's by all of you contributing that we've gotten to where we are. So with that, we will need to close our sacred space for this week. So please relax and close your eyes and take in a nice leisurely deep breath through the nose and a nice leisurely exhale. Maybe we can breathe in some warmth and love and confidence and support. When we breathe out, we can let go of some of the worry, some of the fear. We'll just take a moment of being present in this moment. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. All right, friends. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. If you happen to be watching the recording on YouTube or another place, thank you so much for hanging out with us today and sticking with us until the end. And I will see you next week.
Thank you, Greg.